Yosh! Let's find out the truth behind Scarlet. So tell me about you. Do you have family? Friends? Well, you guys are my first real friends, Scarlet said with a small smile, which then disappeared. But family is complicated. I have 3 brothers, Prowler, Scamp, and Rebel. Prowler and Scamp are a year older than me and Rebel. What about your parents? My, mother died. Not long after having me and Rebel, she became very ill and just, couldn't hold on anymore, Scarlet said sadly. But she kept her composure and continued while Plucky listened intently. After that, my father was the one that looked after us, until he... She couldn't stop a tear this time. Was killed protecting me from some wolves when I was still a cub. Wolves? Plucky questioned, having never heard of such an animal. Yeah, they're like us, but much bigger and stronger. They don't sound so tough. Just wait till you see one, though I hope you never do. I'm scared to death of them. Scarlet shuddered, but then continued. But anyway, both of my parents' deaths, Prowler and Scamp blame me for. They hate my guts. They were the ones who started calling me a jinx. Rebel, though, I don't know what he thinks. He used to always put me before him. But now I'm not so sure, Scarlet explained, and continued again. Prowler took charge after that, being the oldest, and we began traveling. Not too soon after, we ran into Caesar and Tyran and their troop of grey foxes. There was a big battle between wolves and grey foxes? Oh, right. Tyran must be Caesar's son, then. Yeah, wait. How do you know about them? Scarlet asked, surprised. I kind of met them once, Plucky said awkwardly. And then we never see them again, but we're finally getting a mention of them. Yeah, so the old guy that we met, he's Caesar, and, maybe the grey fox that I gave the Scottish accent to, he was Tyran. I feel a bit awkward. What? When did you meet them? It was before I met you, and... Why didn't you tell me? Scarlet interrupted, keeping her voice low to not wake the others who were sleeping. I didn't think it mattered, Plucky said in defense, also trying to keep his voice low to not wake the others. Of course it matters. Did I tell you there was bad luck and that they were hunting me down? Yes, for deserting them. But it's not like I believed a word of it. Especially not after I met you. So, you knew all along about me? Why didn't you turn me over to them? Scarlet asked anxiously. Because you needed help, and I wasn't about to hand someone over to their death. That's not what we do, those of us that have taken the Farthing Wood oath, Plucky explained forcefully. Oh yes, of course, Scarlet conceded. Well, if you did meet them, you'll probably have seen my brothers too. I do recall seeing some other red foxes. Yeah, that'll be them. Why did you desert the troop in the first place? Plucky asked. When we ran into them, it was over a year ago, and after another period of bad luck centered around me, Prowler made a deal with Caesar that I was to be betrothed to Tyran, and we would all be placed under their protection and obey Caesar's orders. An arranged marriage. Of course. I'm assuming things with Tyran didn't go so well then. No, not at all. And if you think Caesar is bad, then you don't know about Tyran. He's a monster. He's the one who gave me this. She paused, pointing out the 3 inline scars on the left of her face. Last spring, She then suddenly tensed up and whimpered, trying to hold back bursting into tears. He even tried to force himself on me, until Caesar beat him off. Plucky was horrified to hear that someone could have acted so cruelly, but he continued to listen carefully to Scarlet's story. He felt a little guilty for asking about it. It was very obvious it was hard for her to speak about it. Let's quickly recap, okay? Scarlet's parents died. Her 2 brothers blamed her for it. Her 3rd brother was sort of nice to her. They met the Grey Foxes. And Prowler made a deal with Caesar that she would marry Tyran. She didn't want to because Tyran is apparently, doesn't know the meaning of sexual consent. And that's why the Grey Foxes are trying to kill her, because she won't marry Tyran. Jesus Christ. No wonder she wanted to be on her own for so long. It was after that when, surprisingly enough, it was Caesar who told me to run away, Scarlet continued. What? Did he trick you into doing it so he would be forced to kill you? Plucky said suspiciously. No, he genuinely advised me to, but did warn me he would be forced to hunt me down and kill me if I did. And you left, obviously. Yes, but I ended up tricking him. I left without him knowing. Gave me a good head start. Sounds too suspicious. Like he wanted you to run away. No. He took pity on me. Not that I wanted it. She stuttered and regained her confidence before speaking again. Don't get me wrong, though, Caesar isn't a bad person. He's only upholding the laws of his ancestors and kin, and he'd do anything to accomplish it. Which doesn't bode well for me. I'm not so convinced he really had your best interests at heart, Plucky said solemnly. I don't know what to believe, really. But I would rather be dead than forced to be Tyran's mate. I can understand. He sounds horrible. He seemed horrible when I saw him too. Yes, well, ever since that last spring I've been travelling the world on my own. Until I met you, of course, but you already know that. Yeah. You must have come a long way since then. Plucky led off. Scarlet nodded silently, but then quickly asked, evidently wanting to change the conversation, What about you, then? I imagine you have family and lots of friends. Well, in here, yes. Plucky chuckled slightly, referring to the rest of the group, and back in White Deer Park. I kind of have to know everyone, being leader and all. Though, I don't think I'll be entrusted with that again once we get there. Well, I'm sure your family will understand. I don't know. Maybe. But I can probably expect the scolding of my life from my grandfather when we do get there, Plucky said awkwardly. And given that you have the same scar on your eye as your father and the same leg wound that's currently healed, I don't think he's going to take it well. Just saying. Well, once we tell him all we've been through, he might let off. Scarlet tried to cheer him up. Hopefully, Plucky said unconvincingly. So about your family? Scarlet asked again. Yes, well, you met my mother, Whisper, and then there are my grandparents, Fox and Vixen, my aunt and uncles, Charmer, Ranger, Friendly, and Russet, and all their cubs, my cousins. They're all still cubs? Well, probably not now, but I'm still a year older than all of them. Did, your mother like me? Scarlet asked anxiously. Yeah, she thought you were very sweet, Plucky affirmed with a smile. If she didn't, she wouldn't have convinced Plucky to follow his heart and follow you. Well, that's a relief, Scarlet said cheerily. What about your father? Plucky stayed quiet a while before he answered. Well, He paused and sighed. Scarlet could tell she had unintentionally struck a nerve with him, which became clear when Plucky spoke again. I never knew my father. He died before I was born. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked, Scarlet said guiltily. Well, I try not to think about it too much, let alone talk about it. I wish I could have met him, though, or at least know what he looked like, Plucky said sorrowfully. I couldn't imagine not knowing my parents. I mean, both of mine died when I was young, but I still remember them. Yeah, I get it. Can we change the subject, though? Of course. I'm sorry. Scarlet apologized, feeling that she had been a little insensitive. The fox and vixen stayed sitting in silence for a bit after that, watching the night engrossed world pass by, and listening to the clickety-clack sound of the train along the rails. I'm a little cold, Scarlet suddenly muttered. Plucky knew this was girl code for she wants someone to keep her warm, so immediately obliged and moved closer to her. Plucky suspected that she was lying as when he pressed her body against hers and wrapped his tail around her, she was warmer than him. I guess in here we forgot it's still winter out there, Plucky joked, causing them both to chuckle. After a while again, Scarlet broke the silence. So, what's White Deer Park like? You know, you've been there, Plucky replied jokingly. I was passing through, remember? Not exactly much time to explore it. Yes, I suppose. There are even some places I haven't explored yet, not since it was extended last year. It must be big then. Yeah, there's plenty of land of all kinds of terrain, and it's safe-ish. Why do you keep saying that? Scarlet inquired, having noticed that it wasn't the first time he'd said that. What? Plucky asked, puzzled. That the park is safe-ish. It's either safe or it isn't. Well, it is, from humans. But other animals... That's a different story. How so? Well, when my grandparents first arrived there with all the other animals from Farthing Wood, there were complications. Have you ever seen Farthing Wood? No, but when Owl, one of my friends, came back from leaving the park, she had been there, and it was all gone. No trees. Just houses that humans had built, Plucky said a little glumly. No wonder they all left there originally, but what sort of complications did they encounter then? Scarlet inquired further, and Plucky continued to explain. Well, when they arrived, this was all before I was born. In fact, it all started before my father and aunt and uncles were born too. But anyway, there was already a group of blue foxes that lived in the park. Their leader, Scarface, didn't like my grandparents' presence in the park, and he went around killing some of the other animals, including Dash's grandmother and one of my grandparents' cubs. That's horrible. What happened in the end? My grandfather challenged Scarface to single combat and beat him but didn't kill him. Both of them took some wounds for it, but in the end, Ada killed Scarface, bit him right in the leg. Ada, of course, being another one of your friends. Yes, she's an adder, as you could have probably guessed. Yeah, a snake with a venomous bite. I've never seen one before, though. So what happened after? After Scarface was killed, the blue foxes left the park except for 2 of them, which my aunt and uncle had taken as mates. But then, of course, peace was short-lived when last year the park was being invaded by rats. Plucky huffed snidely about the last statement. They couldn't have been too difficult to fight off. Not when there were thousands of them. I hate rats, Plucky said almost maliciously. I can imagine, Scarlet stated. But apart from all of that, it's as safe can be. It's, grass is greener on the other side kind of place. Plucky quickly continued positively to change the mood. We all look out for each other and care for each other. All of us in Farthing Land, of course. The rest of the park isn't protected by the oath. Nature just takes its course. It must be difficult. Protecting animals you would normally hunt, Scarlet asked almost uneasily. Not as much as you'd think, but I've grown up like that. When you go hunting, you just have to be careful, Plucky reassured her. It does sound wonderful, though. I'd like to get away from humans, particularly after the stuff we've gone through. Well, I think I came off worse, Plucky joked, referring to the scars across his face and on his leg, and the nick in his left ear. Scarlet didn't find it funny, though. She only sighed and looked down, full of guilt, and moved away from Plucky slightly. She still felt responsible for the event when they escaped the fox trappers on the moors. Hey, Plucky grabbed her attention. Don't tell me you still feel bad about that. Of course I do! It's my fault you got hurt, Scarlet said miserably. If I hadn't been such an idiot, you wouldn't— Scarlet, look at me, Plucky interrupted, grabbing her attention. I might have these scars, but I'm alive and you're alive. All of us are alive. And by the end of tomorrow, we'll be safe and sound in White Deer Park. Plucky reassured her, and she was easily consoled. Yes, we will, Scarlet smiled. There was a long pause before Plucky spoke. Actually, I was wondering, when we get there, are you going to stay? I thought about it, but if Caesar or Tyran find me— Scarlet stuttered, starting to become hysterical. You've got me now. I'll protect you, Plucky assured her forcefully. I can't ask you to do that for me, Plucky, Scarlet argued. Nothing bad is going to happen to you as long as I'm here. Plucky, I appreciate it, but I can't be putting my problems on others. You know that's why I've been alone since I ran away. Nevertheless, you are— Plucky paused, being very careful in what he was saying. My friend, and I don't want anything to happen to you. He knew now, if he was going to tell her how he truly felt, this was the moment to do it. Plucky, please. I don't— Scarlet began again, but was quickly interrupted. Scarlet, I should have told you this the moment I met you. Plucky paused, letting go of his argumentative, assertive tone, and continued in a calm, soft voice. You're the most beautiful vixen I've ever met. Come on, you must have met others. Scarlet shrugged, but was obviously flattered. Well, yeah, there are others in White Deer Park, Plucky replied. And what's so different about them? Scarlet asked. Her heart sank slightly from Plucky's last statement. Well, they're just so boring. Not really fun or outgoing. Not like you. Plucky, Scarlet began, both flattered and almost speechless. I lied to you, Scarlet, Plucky said, looking down in guilt, and paused as Scarlet listened intently. When I told you why I left the park to travel with you, I didn't leave for adventure or freedom, There's plenty of that in the confines of the park. He lifted his head and smiled. I left for you. But you just abandoned everyone. And left them safely in my aunt's paws, of which I know she'll do a good job. Plucky, I don't know what to say. Scarlet stated her speechlessness. When I first saw you out of breath in that clearing in the park. Wait, I remember that. Were you stalking me? No. All I did was look to my right one time when I was racing Dash. And there you were, alone in that glade. Just popped into my life. Plucky admitted, and continued in an affectionate voice. And I looked at you, and knew. I thought, to myself, this is the one for you. Scarlet just sat there speechless, and continued to listen to Plucky's confession of his emotions. I loved you from the moment I first saw you, Plucky said tenderly, and went on to ask the question he'd wanted to say for months. And if you do stay once we get there, would you stay with me as my mate? Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? That you could fall and no one would hear? Scarlet stayed quiet. There were so many thoughts rushing through her head. If she'd say yes, if she'd say no, what would happen depending on what she did, both now and in the future? She was completely surprised Plucky had asked the question so suddenly, even though she had been toying with it herself for ages. Well, let that lonely feeling wash away. Right before you is the gate to a whole new day. You have friends beside you who will take a stand. And a new love that will show you a better land. After a time, she gathered her composure and set aside her thoughts. For the first time in her life, she listened to her heart and pursued the path that she wanted to take, not what she had to take. And oh, I swear I will come running, and I know I'll take you home. Probably scared you off, now have. Plucky began solemnly, before he was interrupted by the one word he wanted to hear. Yes. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, if you only look around, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, you'll reach up and you'll rise again. And I swear from my heart, you will be found. 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 What? Plucky started in disbelief. Yes, I will stay as your mate, Scarlet answered with an emotional break in her voice, and she continued with the same loving tone Plucky had started with. Because I realize now, I love you too. Even when the sun comes crashing through. Even when the sun comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, you'll reach up and you'll rise again. When you're, if you only look around, you will be found. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, you'll reach up and you'll rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. Both Plucky and Scarlet looked affectionately into each other's eyes. The amber color glimmered in the moonlight, and without a moment's notice, they both nuzzled and embraced the other, engulfed in the love they now both shared between them. A bond that would tie them together for the rest of their lives. They nuzzled each other for a while, lovingly and intimately, content with the other's scent and touch as they ruffled their fur together, entwining their bushy tails and pressing their bodies closer, feeling the warmth of the other much more deeply than ever before. It had taken them a long time to admit it, but they now both realized it from the start. This was love. True love. After being lost in their new relationship for some time, they both decided it would be best to get to sleep. Though the journey's end tomorrow wouldn't be long, they wanted to be refreshed and energetic for their return. The Fox and Vixen left a few out of the train door and nestled in a small alcove of the wooden crates, lying together in each other's embrace, and eventually drifted off to sleep together. Meanwhile, the train continued on its journey through the blissful winter's night, taking the group of, now sleeping, traveling animals ever closer to home. Okay, guys. I think now's a good time for me to stop, since it's the end, and I hope you like that musical performance of the song from Dear Evan Hansen, You Will Be Found. I just changed some of the lyrics again because I wasn't able to recall some of them, sorry. But I think the lyrics that I were able to put in instead perfectly captures Scarlet's feelings during this moment. She spent a good chunk of her life on her own. She'd basically been abandoned by her brothers for not wanting to be married to a gray fox and has had the threat of death over her. Sorry. And has spent so much time on her own thinking that she was cursed to be a jinx forever. But now that she's met Plucky and her friends, and they both confess their love to each other, she's found a new home, a new family, and a new mate. So thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, I'm the Masked Ranger saying, keep moving forward, remember the oath, and may love guide you, always. Goodbye.